It's easy to get lost. This is The Revenue Maze, and I'm Valerie Cobb. Join me as we navigate the halls, dead ends, and U-turns on your path towards upward growth trajectory. The Revenue Maze is sponsored by Revenue North Star, guidance and execution through fractional revenue leadership, uncovering hidden revenues, and empowering small business growth through process-driven sales customized to your company environment. Well, welcome everybody. I'm super excited to have you on the show today. I have an amazing guest, and I've been waiting for this one because I'm super excited about him. He has more than 30 years. We're not going to calculate it. More than 30 years executive experience in the engineering and operations management manufacturing space. He also, and this is hard, he's ASQ trained, Six Sigma black belt and executive champion. We'll talk more about champion. And he was on the executive team that launched the Red digital camera in the entertainment and film space. And that is a very big deal. We'll talk about that too. This is exciting today. And he transitioned to something that's really, really cool. He is the CEO at MedWand, and we'll get into that story a little bit today too. So I'm super excited about that. But welcome, Robert Rose.
Thank you, Valerie. My pleasure to be here.
Oh, I have just always, I just love these stories. And I think that is one of the funnest thing about being a podcast host is I get to hear about all these great things. And we're going to learn even more about you. But we always start the show with one thing. What is one thing that you can tell the listeners that will help them get out of the revenue maze?
One thing.
Then you can build up bullet points on how to fix it.
right. Yeah, it's so easy. I think the most important lesson that we can learn as leaders of companies is to kind of abandon your preconceptions of things. Listen to the voice of your customer and be ready to pivot, because what you think is going to happen isn't, and you need to be listening and paying attention. If you listen to what your customers want, you've got a good chance of succeeding.
I love that. There's been a few that listen, why do we need to keep being reminded of this? So it must be incredibly difficult. I'm in revenue, so I know it's very difficult. Sometimes we get very myopic. So give us a few pointers on how you've actually navigated that. How can you help us listen better?
I think if you're going to be successful, there's only three real value propositions, on earth, right? It's the customer intimacy, price, or operational excellence. And you got to be perfect at one, really good at a second. And the third one, you don't have to worry about too much. And we can take any company that's successful in revenue generation and attribute one of those as their leading mantra. Look at Intel's a good example, or Microsoft as being technological leaders. From a customer intimate standpoint, you're talking about delighting a customer. Starbucks, I think, kind of goes that way. Why else would we pay $5 for a cup of coffee, right? And then there's price, and price is okay. If you're lowest price, you may generate more revenue, but you got to make it up in volume. So you need to know what you're good at, and stay that way. For me personally, my successes have been more focused on new and unique technology, something that like Red Digital, where we invented the 4K camera, we obsoleted film,
all that little stuff.
And we did, and it was a great run. Back in the day, I was with Tandy, Radio Shack Systems Integration, back when Michael Dell was starting to build to order computers. Well,
Mhm.
we had a great infrastructure. We could do it faster as well as he could do it. And we had a great market. But you have to understand where the market need is and be able to fill that. And if you've got a compelling product and a good market, then go out and be the very best you can on one of those value propositions. And you should be able to sell stuff, but you also have to be, you talk about generating revenue. It's not just about revenue. It's about operational excellence. You can't be large, onerous, and sloppy in everything that you do. You have a great product, but if you lose $2 on every one that you ship, you can't make it up in volume. So
Then you're, well, not so much a nonprofit, right?
right. But even a nonprofit has to garner funding, and eventually
Yes,
somebody's going to say,
exactly.
"Hey, I'm sorry, it's enough is enough of this," right? So you do have to be operationally excellent. And that's where the Six Sigma stuff comes in. Is that being able to be focused on continuous improvement and the voice of the customer. The rest of it tends to work itself out.
I love that basically you described to me a three-legged stool, and yeah, one of them has to be really, 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 really done well. And I have noticed there's a few people recently, the life cycle of companies sometimes is that they're not so well in one of those areas and then they pick it up, because it used to be that Microsoft was awful with tech support for small business.
Oh
And
yeah.
now they are like rocking tech support. Like I can get them as fast on the line as, well, HubSpot, and that's like in 2 seconds, right? So they've kind of done a really amazing turn. And then when you started kind of mentioning some of those being the forerunner in some of those areas, listening to the voice of the customer helps you do that, right? I mean, that's the whole point. If you're in a pre-emerging market, then it's much easier than if you're trying to compete head on.
Yeah, I have a great example of this, having, like most of us, traveled extensively throughout my career. Back in the day when America West flew out of Phoenix, primarily in the Southwest, they had one of the best call center operations in the industry, in the airline industry. You knew if you called America West for a reservation or for a problem, they were on the phone just like that. And whoever answered spoke English and was actually likely in Phoenix, where their call centers were located as part of their company. If you tried to call some other airlines, like it was, you're going to wait on hold for an hour and a half, and the level of service caused me to want to fly America West, because I knew that, an airplane's an airplane, and okay, it's they're not that much different once you get on board. But the whole process of getting there, and consumers speak with their wallets in that regard. So it's important that, again, listen to the voice of the customer. Internally, you've got to look at why the phone rings. I took over a computer company that was losing a ton of money back in 2000.
You were one of the insane.
I won't name them, but I was brought in to do a turnaround, and they had. And I spent the first few days before I ever went to their factory just looking at the books, and it was like, okay, why do you have all these people in your call center? And that means, and then looking at the call center metrics, their speed to answer was being measured in hours instead of seconds, and their first pass resolution was poor, and because they weren't focused on why the phone rang and what it was the customers were calling about. The more you, again, this goes back to the voice of the customer, but it's not just about the product you're providing, but it's the back-end services that you're providing, so that when your customer calls you, you can resolve the problem instantly. From a revenue standpoint, that sells more stuff. From an operational standpoint, it costs less money. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but you have to introduce in the manufacturing space your engineering group to your call center group to your manufacturing group to your quality group and make it a closed loop.
Yes.
And too often companies leave that loop open somewhere. And it's always the customer that ends up suffering in the end, because you can't close that a problem and or answer a question that might be germane in somebody making a decision on a purchase, particularly a major purchase on an expensive product. So those are all. There isn't one thing, Valerie, that
exactly. We can talk.
But there are certain basic disciplines that you've got to master if you're going to have predictable revenue and successful operations. And then I think the last piece of that, or to just carry it a little bit further as an executive or as a manager, is you got to look at the P&L and manage by P&L. Look where the money's going and look for those hidden profit leaks. And usually when you kick a rock and find a profit leak underneath, you're also going to find a customer service problem, because you're spending money on something you shouldn't be. So to my mind, revenue goes both ways. It's what's coming in, but it's also what's going out and what you keep based on how well you run your company.
Yeah. We'll have a different dialogue, but there's the whole thought process of what is a CRO versus a VP of sales. And we'll do that offline, but it is talking about somewhat of that, closing that loop. And there is misunderstanding, obviously, in that realm as well. But I love what you're saying. And I like I said, I was super excited to have you on my show, simply because I love your journey, right? Your journey and what you've done, what you're doing, and how you're moving forward. So I know that some of this was brought from a little bit of life experience. So let's go back a little bit. What kind of brought you to this point, right? What kind of, if there was like maybe it's too difficult to pinpoint, but a pivotal moment in your life that kind of went, this is my journey, this is where I'm going.
Yeah, other than sheer dumb luck. Dang,
can you rub my shoulder?
getting sold, I feel like sometimes like fish, but I've been in enough companies that have been sold that it's kind of been a story of my life as well. But I think when, a pivotal moment was probably, let's go back to about 1994. And I was working for a company in South Florida that made onboard entertainment systems for commercial aircraft.
Okay.
And our company was sold to Northrop. And I found myself in South Florida without a job, and it wasn't exactly the bastion of technology down there at the time. Probably it wasn't like being in Silicon Valley, So I knew some key people in a Tandy organization, and I got on the phone. I started like dialing for dollars. Said, hey, I really need a job here. And long story short, I ended up taking a job with Tandy to take over a service center in a brand new Computer City store in Georgia. I took a 50% pay cut to do this, right? But I had a secret mission, and that was from my boss in Fort Worth at Tandy, and that was, these service centers do okay in the Computer City stores, but we're looking for ways to enhance our revenue. Okay, yeah. So how do you do that? And we just want you to go in and take a look and know your history a little bit, and see if you can find new ways to cause these service centers to become more profit centers. I mean, the store is what it is, and it just sells what it sells. So this is where brand new store, 2 or 3 months. One of the salespeople in the corporate sales group came over and said the Weather Channel would like to have a whole bunch of these computers. They were just down the street from us, and but they're different than anything we have in here. Can you guys build those for them? I thought, yeah, sure we can. We got all the parts we need out there. It's just, we'll build you the, so that started us doing build to order computers in that little store in Smyrna, Georgia. And within 6 months, we'd grown a business that was expected to do a couple $100,000 a year in service work to a couple of $1 million a year pace in build to order, as we started offering it through our corporate sales side. And then we expanded to some of the other stores. And then one day, the VP of Tandy Retail Services walked into my little service center. He came all the way out from Fort Worth and said, "We need to go to lunch." And so we did. And one of the great mentors in my career, by the way, his name is Bob McClure. And Bob said, "This is great. I've got 1,500 Radio Shack franchise stores, the Incredible Universe chain, and all of the Computer City chains that need to have these services. And I've got an empty building out in Hazel, Texas, and it's yours. You're now Group General Manager of Tandy Systems Integration. Pick the people you want and move to Fort Worth, please, tomorrow." And so that's a true story. And I did. And I took most of my team with me out of that little store, and we built a factory, and we were doing $30 million in business by 6 months down the road. And it kind of snowballed from there as far as my career is concerned, because a year or so later, Tandy sold the Computer City stores to CompUSA. And
wow, yeah, I remember that.
looked at what we were doing and wanted our factory and our build to order capabilities as part of the deal. And what came out of that was CompUSA PC, and all of us went to CompUSA, and my core team, and we stayed with CompUSA until it was sold to Carlos Slim. And we saw it's Telmex in Mexico, and we saw the writing on the wall for that. And from there, I ended up being global vice president of operations for Wiley Systems. And I was there until Wiley was sold to Arrow, and then I went on to do that recovery mission and the next computer company. And it just kind of escalated my career as we went. But along the way, I became a student of Jack Welch and Six Sigma, and started to see what it meant to be operationally excellent. And I decided that a lot of people paid lip service to Six Sigma, but I couldn't bring it into a company and do it right unless I understood it myself. And so I went through the ASQ training and became a black belt, and say executive champion, which is not quite even being a black belt, but just endorsing it, but driving an entire Six Sigma initiative, more than one company from the top down, and it worked. And anyway, more recently, it's been a little different. But
well, it is certainly an amazing story when we talk about those things, because I mean, when I go into companies, I always do what I was taught now is called high involvement planning, to create that excellence loop every single year for forecasting out. So but I am not Six Sigma, and I've read up on it, and I've met people, and I'm like, they are just the sharpest people. I should probably do that anyways, but that's a cool story.
Be careful, because you can mess that up too.
Yeah, probably.
I know we've met people along the way who like Kaizen events, they'll do Kaizen events for the sake of doing them. Okay. And I don't need people from 6 different departments, including the janitor, telling me how I should organize my desk. Right?
Exactly.
It can get that ridiculous. And so you have to take everything with a modicum of common sense.
Common
right?
sense.
And moderation in what you're doing, and just don't become a zealot about anything, but be able to look at a much bigger picture.
Yeah. And when it gets down to it, I think there was a LinkedIn post talking about common sense, that gut reaction and emotion, and there's some things in there that it's just very, very interesting. So no, it's a cool story. So I know that there later on in this show, we'll talk a little bit more about just you personally. I hear some little bit of Olympics and track and this kind of stuff. So you must have been a high achiever at all times, and in all places and on all things. But did that take you then? What finally took you to the journey of MedWand? Why'd you switch to healthcare? Because I've been in healthcare too, and there's different reasons why I've done that. But why the switch?
Remember when I said pure dumb luck? I actually started my career in healthcare. When I got out of college, my very first job was as a production control manager for a medical equipment company in
Okay.
Maryland. And so I have a bit of a background in it. And then I went into consumer electronics and the rest of the history that you heard up through Red. But it's how I got into this was an accident. When I left Red, I started my own contract engineering company, and
Okay.
I had several engineers that were at Red and some other people that I knew, and we saw a need for, especially here in Southern California, for a kind of a different kind of contract engineering company, and one of my engineers had been a senior scientist at Massimo. Another guy who's a medical equipment designer on the hardware side of things. So I had a lot of talent there, and we did several different projects early in that company, which was called Cypher Scientific, which still exists today, only it's wholly owned by MedWand now. But it was a vibrant lifestyle company that did kind of medical equipment, and it was kind of cool. And then you need to transition into how MedWand started, at least in order to finish this story. But
Okay.
I knew a doctor in Las Vegas, and he and I knew each other for some other business, and we were talking one day, and he had no idea that I had an engineering company. He's a direct primary care physician, and he asked me what I did, and I said, well, I've got an engineering company, and we do like some medical equipment and different projects, and we have a lot of fun. I said, oh, I've got this great idea. My sister called me from Chicago the other day, and she had an upper respiratory problem, and I tried to auscultate her lungs with a cell phone, and it didn't work out too good. So I would love, and this was in 2000, a long time ago. We started the company. This would have been 2014. He said, I'd love to have a device where I could just like take basic vitals like I do in my office, but over the internet. And so yeah, I think we could build that. And he got any money, and he was like, no. And
of course not.
Yeah, not that kind of money anyway. I said, but I think it's a great idea. So why don't we partner up? You're a doctor, I'm an engineer. All we need is a lawyer, and we're all set. And so we made a company, and we called it MedWand Solutions. And then we spent the next 2-3 years going out and trying to fund it, and we did. We got MIT Angels interested, and that's where our first funding came from. There's a lot more to this story as you want me to tell it, but that's how it started. But what we started with 8 years ago and where we are at today is a completely different place. And that's because when we talk about listening to the voice of your customers, the pandemic helped a lot in propelling telehealth 10 years into the future in about 20 months. But at the same time, so technology has evolved as well. So what started out as a product idea for something that could be used by a doctor to examine a patient remotely has turned into an entire platform and an ecosystem that's now a platform for AI and for other devices and a lot more. And it's because it had to, and we couldn't have one without the other.
Yeah.
So here we are. I would add to that, it's not a bad thing to do well by doing good, and we're going to have a big effect on people as we move forward, and the healthcare landscape in general. guess Tori filled you in on what we've done at the Smithsonian. We just got back from a week at the Smithsonian, and we were honored by the Futures exhibition going on at Smithsonian Arts and Industries building since last November. As the future of healthcare. I mean, and the recognition and the reception that we've gotten along the way has just been so gratifying.
Oh, wow.
So, to see, you ask why I've done this. Well, I think it's why I've become, I said you shouldn't do it, what, a zealot or so much more passionate about what we're doing now than anything I've done in my career. And that's because we're in a field that needs help.
Oh, yes, it does.
And the delivery of healthcare around the world is a mess. And, if you've got a lot of money, it's okay, I suppose. But, we talk about health equity, and, there's billions of people that there's no health care at all, let alone health equity. But 60 million people here in the United States live more than a half an hour drive to the nearest healthcare facility. So, you find a need that is, really needs solutions. We can't boil the ocean and solve everything, but maybe together we can. And our small part of it is important. And so I chose to abandon the rest of what we were doing with Cipher Scientific and move my team and everything else 100% into MedWand and expand our footprint, if you will, to an entire ecosystem that could really make a difference, not just a toy or a product or a wearable that we might sell and make a little bit of money from, but something that could help. And when you get up in the morning knowing that, it makes it all worthwhile. So
I love it. It's about the entire wellness. I quite often, when you say luck and stuff like that, I was only in healthcare for a short time. I've been in a lot of different industries. And one of the things that I really did find is two things. One, someone I really love to this day because of how she was, right? And I'm going to shout her out because I like shouting people out on the show, but her name's Gail Lindsey. And she was with the group that kind of was pioneering Kaiser Permanente's preventative care campaigns and things like that they were doing, especially along some areas that she and I had some symbiotic family relations that had issues in, and stuff like that. But more than that, she just is a person who practiced what she preached in it. There's a lot of that fee for service stuff going around, and that's right. There's a lot of people who they don't need the God complex. They need somebody who holistically looks at them and sees them as an individual that isn't a tooth, isn't an ear, isn't a eye, isn't a, all that kind of stuff. And I remember talking at the time at Highmark and just talking with my brain just went blank. But anyways, we were talking about the holistic approach for that. And I felt like, and that healthcare in all its blustering, we get here, Humana's bold gold and all of that kind of stuff is very antiquated, and they stay behind the times because they don't move forward in some things, right? Some things they are just like so on it, kind of like I was in heavy equipment, the trucks were all shined, right? They were great, but there's digital stuff is like way, way behind in that area. And we worked on some things that was operational excellence, just more to get more reach to those who could have social determinants, different things, just to work that way, And so I really felt like that was a very gratifying time in my life, for sure. So
yeah, I know what you mean. And we look at in the medical space today, we're trying to push a transition away from fee for service, and coin operated doctors, right? To outcome based reimbursement models that the Medicare has done a fairly good job of motivating hospitals to modify their post admission or their
readmissions,
readmission stuff, because they're fined for readmissions. And while it's still kind of a fee for service, or it's a coin operated approach, but it does affect the outcome. And devices like ours can start to level the playing field. And you talk about social determinants of health. Well, that's
exactly
income level and access and all of that. It's a big hill to climb, but okay.
I had another group tell me
we'll take it. One of my members of my advisory board has a company that here's a guy who doesn't need to work, right? But yet he's just totally motivated to do the right things or good things. And so he figured, well, what am I going to do next in my life? Let me take on some small thing like opioid addiction.
Yeah.
So he went out and figured out that by using VR, they could modify behavior and affect those pain receptors in the brain in the same way that an opioid could, and has had incredible results at reducing addictions and dependencies on opioids. There's stuff that we can do. We just have to, have the will to take it on and not let the status quo stop us. I tell my people all the time, you can never stop or they will catch you. And so we just keep pushing, and if your motivation is to do good things, then I think you talk about this is all about revenue, right? The revenue maze sorts itself out if you can do what we've been talking about, which is to listen to your customer and find a place where there's a need and be operationally excellent. The revenue takes care of itself, or it should.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I 100%, because I've been on the revenue side, whether I wanted to or not, for some reason, my entire life, and I love it. I do. I love the thrill of seeing things grow and seeing jobs created, and then the whole the widget is sometimes the most exciting part, but the other part is just seeing that somebody has the ability to excel. That's what I get off on. My kids always say, your love language is service, Mom. And I'm like, yeah, it is, because I like to see people, growing and being able to make it. And I like these small businesses to definitely make it, because they have they've listened to the customer, and the customer has kind of said, here's this need. And we talk about that all the time, even when I train sales teams, we talk about stop selling. Well, how do you stop selling? Well, really, Daniel Pink says to sell is human. How about stop trying to manipulate and just look for a need and fill the need? Because once you fill that need, then the value is already there. So it's the same circular sort of way of looking at it. And sometimes we get so focused on, well, did you get your numbers this month? And trust me, I'm very numbers oriented. Everything. But then there's the emotional aspect that kind of goes up with that. So, and your gut reaction too.
Yeah, I think there's a bifurcation between we talk about the CRO versus, VP sales, and but one is strategic. When you look at a revenue officer or what direction is the company going, and you're trying to identify those areas where there is a need. Okay, now I've identified a need. I'm going to pass it off to this guy because you're going to figure out how to make that work. And then the tactical execution of sales.
Yeah.
Also not or recognizing when you're in the wrong place, and also knowing not to sell past the close. Okay, it's good enough, you know.
It's
They
good
got
enough.
it. And be obnoxious about it. You know, I think sometimes those things get confused a little bit, particularly in smaller companies, because you'll have a VP of sales and marketing who's trying to think strategically or execute strategically, and at the same time has to support the tactical execution of stuff, and you know, is down in the minutia of things. We're going through that now. I don't have that many people, and so
yeah, the producer player does not quite work very well. I mean, we can get into that one completely, and I mean to make us so that we digress, because I want you back on MedWand and some of the excellence that you have achieved. I mean, this, you know, it's great to go out to the Smithsonian as we start to think of, okay, you can do good, you can make money and do good. Okay, great. So I hear that you have always done excellence, whether it's been in just sitting, whether it's been in growing those companies or whatever, but track in the Olympics, does that ring a bell?
Actually, it wasn't track.
It wasn't track. Okay. Tori, you're fired.
No. It was,
I'm just teasing
right about
her.
that. I was, I was one of the non-Olympians from 1980 because we boycotted that year. It didn't get to go,
sorry.
I'm a fencer. So, and I've been fencing. I started fencing.
Fencing. Oh, okay. Maybe I miswrote it. I'm sorry.
You know, as in like with a sword. I started fencing in my first year of college, and I found out that I was really good at this. And pretty soon I was nationally ranked, and I actually had a talent for it. And I continued to fence up into my early 50s.
Wow.
So I had to have my knees replaced. But even now, I'd like to get back out on the strip, but I just have been so busy. I could only do so many things. You know, I'm also a pilot, and I have a race car, and I keep really, really busy. So
she listed those things. I was like, no way.
But I've also, you know, I've also been fired, and you know, I've had financial stress in my life too, and I've always managed to fall uphill because you just keep going, you know, and do the best you can. And part of it's luck, and part of it's just perseverance. You just have to keep on it and keep on it and keep on it, and things don't always work out. I remember before I went to Red, I was doing some consulting work for a couple of years, and I ended up in a little office in a company in New Jersey, dialing for dollars, trying to, you know, bring in as a sales guy, you know, and traveling back and forth to my home in Las Vegas, and you know, so I've done a couple startups that I've been involved in but didn't start, that have failed, and you know, oh, okay, now what? So you know, I'm in this group called ABL here in Southern California. It's Adaptable Business Leaders, and it's C-level roundtables.
Sure.
And we have both technology roundtables and healthcare roundtables. And I'm on one of the healthcare roundtables. And this came up just in the last couple of months in one of our meetings. That I just asked the question: how many people in here have been fired more than once? Every hand went up. Okay.
Yeah.
If you haven't been fired, you weren't pushing hard enough.
Exactly.
And eventually you're going to rattle somebody's cage, and you're going to get yourself in trouble. And you know, to hear some of the stories, and you know, I'm talking about also in the room, the CEO of a major healthcare company whose name you would recognize, said, "Oh yeah, I got fired 3 times from that," you know, and it's like, because that's what we do, right? But it just, you don't have to everybody is not going to end up where I did. I said some of it's been by luck, some of it's been by planning, but if you can be the best at what or try your best, it's going to get recognized, and you go a long way. I've learned that to surround yourself with a great team and let them run. If you've got the right people, you don't have to micromanage them. I look at my job, and I always have, whether I've been a division manager or I've been CEO, is as a more like a conductor of a symphony orchestra. I can't play any of those instruments as well as any of those guys can, but I can all play together perfectly. And that's really a recipe for I think for success for a company. In a fast company. I also had another boss who's passed away, who another great mentor of mine. His name was Rob Howe, and Rob always had the saying that if your senior staff can't fit in a minivan, you have too many people.
So, I love that.
But if you
with
need
duct tape on the door.
Yeah, right. So, and not a clown car minivan, but you have to be able to surround yourself with the right key people and let them do their jobs. And you don't always succeed at that with everybody, but on balance, the team works well together. If you got a bad apple, it doesn't stay very long anyway. So and that's again from navigating the revenue maze, having the right team, understanding how all the parts fit together is really critical. So I've been pretty good at that over the years. I can't take credit for everything. I can only just to wax philosophic for a minute, but I have had some great mentors in my career, and you take the time to listen. And now all of a sudden, I've realized in the last couple of years as this journey's gone on, that all of a sudden I'm them. And people were coming to me with it. And it's like, now I got to sit down and go, gosh, what would Rob do? Or what would Bob McClure say about this? Because I've got to come up with an answer here. So I put together this great advisory board of people who I just respect tremendously, who have wide and varied experiences inside of the medical business in general, but specifically in different silos, to act as advisors and listen to them. And we had an advisory board meeting this morning, and I got a whole list of stuff here on my desk I didn't even think of.
Yeah.
And that we got two of these and one of these for a reason. And listen twice as much as you speak. Should do okay.
I love that. That's fantastic. And it's great advice because we have up and coming generations that are also trying to build new things to help solve needs. And so I love listen twice as much as you talk. That is true. I love that you're talking about it. And I love the humility portion of it because.
Well, let me talk about what you just touched on, which is my millennials. First of all, and I have several working for me. You already know Tori, and I've got, I don't know, 4 or 5 in our little company here.
Yeah.
And I'll have many more as time goes on.
I was going to say you're going to have, because you're going to have the next gen.
but they have a different perspective than the one I came up with, and a different view of life. They've grown up with where I have an intense expectation of privacy. They have no expectation of privacy. They live their lives out. They live their lives out. Well, you're a podcaster, you know this. They live their lives out on social networking, but they understand what's going on in the world and what people think, and they're smart, and they care about different things. They don't care as much about doing better than their parents did, like I grew up with, and that they care more about fixing stuff, and doing the right things. And along the way, they also know how to have some fun, and they're not as structured as we were, and they're brilliant. And I have found that the millennials we have here in the company are, or Gen X or Z.
I was going to say there, whatever Pew Research tier we're on at this point coming up. Yes.
Yeah. But 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds are 20 something or 30 something, adds so much more dimension to our company, but we have to stop and listen to them and have to be very, very careful not to tick them off, because they I can't say you've got to be here from 9 to 5. Those days don't exist for those guys.
No.
They'll get the job done. They'll work 20 hours if they need to. They'll work 3 if they need to, and you just have to trust them. If you have the right ones. But from what I know of the young people that at least work for me, I think we're in really good hands for the future. So at least I'm hoping. It's hopeful.
That's and I wouldn't have talked about this, but I had a life lesson last week, and it isn't that I didn't have a life lesson, but within your own family, sometimes you forget to listen to your family members, or whatever it is. And my daughter was getting married last week, and it wasn't as structured, and it wasn't all the pomp and circumstance. And what you just described, I was just right before we started this show, I was just describing to somebody the beauty of that event. Now, this is we do not even have the same faith background, right? This is my own daughter, and we don't even have the same faith background. And she is such a giver, and she's so peaceful with it. And so she wanted to have this wedding of 24 people. That was it. And I honored that. But here's the difference. She also wanted to have the two families actually blend and merge. So we were together for 3 solid days for this wedding. And after they got married and they came back from their honeymoon the night, or whatever, they didn't go on their honeymoon right straight from there. The next day, the two families, all we did was play. We did acro gymnastics. And yes, I am in that range where that's scary. And I had to go get a massage on my shoulder from yet another 30-year-old who said, "Why were you doing that?" and laughed. But at the end of the day, I learned that something that I learned clear back in college. I was over some kind of event, and there was differences of opinion on how that event should have happened. And so they went with my way of doing, huge success. The next year they went with the other guy's way of doing, huge success. And that wedding created a memory. Weddings are supposed to be fun and exciting, and it's a celebration. And a lot of times it hasn't been, and as we went through this experience with her, because it was an experience, it was so much better than I could have ever thought it could have been. So when you're talking about letting them run with good ideas and not necessarily gone are the days of saying, clock in, do this. Right. It's really project based. It's really, here's the project, get it done. If you work 60 hours on it, great. If you work 50 hours, 40, whatever you do on it, the project needs done. It's done. We don't need to do that. And so I was so glad you brought that up. Thank you.
They won't quite welcome. I think that, again, if you're going to be successful in business, these are some of the lessons you have to learn, and you've got to let go of some of the status quo ideas and structure that we came up with. We're in a different world now. So, but there's still, still important things to do. One of the questions I know that one was, what excites me about the future. This is part of it, but also what we're doing at MedWand. The last spring, my father-in-law died of a massive stroke.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And he was 84, but what was unfortunate was he didn't need to have died. When they took him to the hospital and they had him in ICU and he was on a 12-lead EKG, the very sophisticated EKG, and it was indicating that he had AFib.
Yeah.
And the AFib or stroke is the second largest killer of people in the world behind ischemic heart disease. Right behind that is COPD, both upper and lower respiratory.
Yeah.
So MedWand has an EKG, a single channel EKG. And in our cloud-based platform, we have an AI engine that can detect 16 different arrhythmias with a single 30-second screening of EKG. 20% of all strokes are caused by undetected AFib.
Yeah.
Imagine the impact if everybody in the world could have a 30-second screening, right? And
Yeah.
see if they had undetected AFib on the millions and millions of people that are going to die between now and this time next year, needlessly. And so there's so much to do and so many opportunities. And so this is one of the things that you talk about, getting up in the morning and getting motivated. And also, motivating your people is it's a key part of my job.
Yeah.
And we talk about, the millennials or the young people and how to get them and keep them motivated. One has to do with the work environment. The other has to do with doing good work. And so I use that story a lot because, it's very personal to me that here's a case where had we finished this device 2 years ago and not been delayed by COVID and the FDA, we might have saved my father-in-law's life, and MedWand detected a heart arrhythmia in me when it first came online. My vice president of sales found out he had tachycardia that was being induced by caffeine. He was drinking too much coffee. His heart was racing. He didn't know it. And we haven't even started shipping yet. Where we expect our final FDA clearance in the next few weeks, and we'll be on the market this year. But after 8 years, we're just poised to do so much, right?
Yeah.
Northrop visited with us at CES, and they want to put MedWand on the International Space Station for a test in order to go with our astronauts for human deep space exploration, colonization of the moon and Mars. They look at devices like ours as key to the future. So, just having come out of the Futures exhibition at the Smithsonian, it's bright if we have the will to make it so.
Yeah.
Can screw up too, but I think there's enough. There's enough drive out there. Yeah. So, yeah.
I love that. So a lot of people, we talked a lot about MedWand. We talked about your story, and that story is very compelling. It's kind of what, when I was talking about Gail Lindsey and our symbiosis, we had some similar kind of thing. And I love that drives. So if I'm summarizing, listen, then make sure that you actually act in a good way to solve a need. And then from there, the future is quite bright. Mm-hmm. And so bringing this all full circle, a lot of people want to know, you're working on all these things. So what do you do for fun in your spare time? Or is this your only fun? And it is fun. Trust me. I business is fun for me. So.
Oh, I love coming to work, but I work hard. I play hard. I guess my single passion outside of work that just takes me away is flying. And, I'm a pilot. We have a little single engine airplane, and it's to get up in the sky and just we're not thinking about work there. We're go cloud dancing or take a flight to somewhere, go look for whales or something. But that's one thing. And I mentioned I have a race car, so I have a Corvette that I race just for fun, track day events, stuff like that. And I did win a Wellwood Corvette Challenge a couple of years ago, but it's the same thing on the track. You do things when you're behind the wheel of a car doing high performance driving events.
Mhm.
You're not thinking about work.
Nope.
You've got to be focused on that next corner coming up, and so you could sit home and think about work, or you could go out and do something that takes I think a totally different mindset and focus away from what you do. And it causes a balance. It's kind of a work hard, play hard thing. Although I do love to relax. I've been studying to get a sommelier certificate for wine and stuff. But typically I like to travel, although I wish I didn't have to travel as much as I do. That I could like pick my destinations more than I do.
Yeah.
But I keep busy. I see people who slow down and then they start aging really bad. And I'm not interested in that. I'd like to just keep busy and keep going and do it as long as I can. And so as long as I'm physically able and mentally able,
You'll keep You'll keep doing race cars and cloud dancing with your airplane. Right. No wonder you might have some heart arrhythmia, kind of. You love all the exciting things. That is fun. That is so much fun. Well, Bob, people want to know how they can get a hold of MedWand, with whatever, because I already know I've taken a mental note, because I already know several people that I want to talk to about MedWand. So how do they get a hold of you?
Sure. First of all, personally getting a hold of me is the easiest way to do that is through LinkedIn.
Okay.
The page, you can look me up. It's Robert Rose, MedWand. You will find me. Our website is MedWand, medwand.com. You'll find the profiles of all of our key people up there, including my advisory board. And you can drop an email request there's an email link there that drops into an info box. And if it's addressed to me, I will get it. Okay. I would encourage people to go take a look at our website anyway, because there's some really cool stuff up there. And follow us. There's going to be we have Twitter and all the social networking sites. You can find MedWand there, but if you go to our website, you'll see all the links. And if you follow us on Twitter, when we do press releases and big news happens, we will tweet it out. And there's fixing to be big news here in the next few weeks. And the biggest news everybody's waiting for is our final FDA clearance. It's been a 2.5-year journey since we filed our initial pre-sub with FDA, all 2,400 pages of it, and we've been going back and forth with issues and questions and clarifications and additional clinical trials and all the things that FDA makes you do. As a Class 2 medical device, and it's been an interesting experience getting an FDA approval for a device in the middle of a pandemic. So
I bet.
Taken a little bit longer than we thought, and a lot more perseverance, but we've gotten through it now, and there's just lots of cool things that are going to start happening. I'm looking forward to the rest of this year. It's going to be dynamic.
I bet you there's going to be a big party in a couple of weeks.
We're already looking at what we're going to do for that. They approved after 8 years.
No. Oh, goodness. Well, all great things. Thank you so much, Bob, for being on the show. Everybody, this is Robert Rose. It was an amazing episode. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for the guests who are listening on this show. Drop him a line in a couple of weeks and show him your support. We really, it's an exciting thing that he's doing. And just again, thank you so much, Bob, for being on the show.
Thank you, Valerie. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you all for joining another great episode. For show notes, links, and resources, visit revenuemaze.com. And never forget, you are why.